So welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We're very excited to be running this webinar series and delighted to be talking about personalized learning and this first of 5 segment to really look at what's a fascinating topic and something that's interesting and appealing to many areas of education as we travel around the world. I'm absolutely delighted for the 2 people that I've had the pleasure to work with, and which I'll introduce to you in a moment. But as I said, this is going to be the first of 5 in this series, and those of you that are joining us again we had a great first session with the Habits of Mind Institute, Benna Kalik and Art Costa. If you didn't catch that one before, the webcast is available at the site that you're on now. So without further ado, I'm actually going to introduce our 2 speakers today. And I guess this webinar is really, we didn't want to make this a presentation. We wanted to have almost a fireside chat. As Allison said yesterday, it's more of a coffee talk, so I'll let her explain that in a bit. But just as a brief introduction of our 2 presenters today, Allison Zmuda, and many of you will know her. She's a renowned author and a thought leader in education today. As an educational consultant, she works with educators to grow ideas, to make learning for students challenging, possible, and worthy of the attempt. She began her career as a public high school teacher in Newtown, Connecticut, where her passion for students and her innovative spirit inspired the writing of her first book, The Competent Classroom. And since then, Allison has gone to write 6 more books, including her most recent, Learning Personalized. And the second subtext of that is the evolution of a contemporary classroom. So if you haven't got that book and read that book, I would highly suggest it. It's fantastic because it provides educators with a clear and practical guide to personalized learning. Within that book, you'll find that Allison discusses Avison charter schools, and specifically their personalized mastery learning models and plans. And which is, the delightful part about having this in the webinar today is we actually have Kate Bean, who is the founder and the executive director of Avison Charter Schools, which in one of the few public U.S. schools has focused on personalized mastery learning and are really doing that from grades K to 12. And Kate started her educational career as a teacher in Los Angeles Unified School Districts, and with her tenure there and Connect, Kate turned her attention to consulting in California schools, faced with developing new educational models in or to continue as public schools. So it was during the No Child Left Behind days that Kate met the team of educational professionals who would help her later establish Avison Charter Schools and introduce a new personalized mastery learning and the teaching model for education. So the exciting part is we really have a renowned author and someone that's really making that happen in schools. And I can say, working with both of them, it's incredibly exciting to have you both here. So welcome this morning. Thank you very much for joining us, Kate and Allison. So good morning to both of you.
Good afternoon and good evening.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So I'm going to start the introductions just a little bit here to see if we can get to know you just a little bit better. We had an interesting preparation yesterday where Allison had convinced us all that she wasn't funny. And I know that in working with her that's not true. So I just thought to break and let everyone else get to know you a little bit better. Allison, can you share with us, your favorite educational funny story, things that happened to you or a funny story from your favorite educator?
Oh my gosh. See, I told Darren that I didn't want to find out ahead of time. So the good news is that this is a surprise. The bad news is that I don't know instantly of anything that happened to me that was funny. I have more horror stories than funny stories. But yeah, so I'm gonna pass to Kate, and then I'm gonna come up with one real quick.
Which I should have been doing as you're talking.
That's right.
I wasn't ready either. Funny, gosh, I think there's so many different stories from actually a teacher in the classroom versus being an administrator of a school. So
she's stalling.
Yes.
Oh, I have a funny one. I have a funny one.
Go.
Okay, ready?
Go.
The very first day of teaching, I think it was like my third period class, and just keep in mind that during the summer, the custodians wax the floor pretty intensely. So again, I'm just saying, new shoes and a slippery floor, you're going to start understanding what might happen. So I think, 3 minutes into greeting my very young students with my very young self, I slipped and wiped out completely. And then I tried to convince the kids that I did it on purpose to teach them a lesson about whatever concept I was talking about at the time. So it was an epic fail, but at least it was something that I think they got us off to a good foot. We had a good laugh after I got embarrassed.
That was bad. Oh, mine's not so much embarrassing, but Oh, go ahead, Derek.
No, go ahead, Kate. We're ready for your story.
Oh, there's just so many anecdotes, but I think in starting a school, that's focused on personalized learning, something that was really important to us was having guiding principles. So we have these 8 guiding principles, and we're almost cult-like with them. So early on, it was guiding principles all the time before we started any meeting, parents, students, anything, advisory time. And I just thought more cute than funny, but I had a little first grader who came up to me. I was just walking down the hallway, and he comes over to me, and he's like, "What's your name again?" And I said, "It's Kate." He's like, "Oh, that's right." He goes, "You're the guiding principal, right, of the school?" And I'm like, "Yes," but first grade, I didn't, correct him, AL versus LE. I didn't correct him because personalized learning. But it was just super cute. It just made everything come together. I'm like, I'll be the guiding principal. I'll take that. I'll take that job. That's not
with your 8 personalities.
Yes. Well, they saw those later.
Well, fantastic. It's great you move those things into those teachable moments. I can remember my science teacher. He was a lovely man, and I remember there was an absolute. He was claimed himself as not funny as well, Allison, but he was delightfully funny, but dry all the time. And I remember it was this absolute massive thunderstorm, and it shook the whole room, stopped everything right in mid-sentence, and it just shook the whole room with the thunder. And I remember him saying, and that should tell you everything is, you need to pay attention to this very carefully, because if you could hear thunder, the lightning didn't get you. So that was his message to us. And so there you go. You've heard the thunder and got you. So first question is, well, thank you very much for sharing. What I'd like to do is kind of move us into personalized learning and talk about that a little bit more. Allison, quite often we hear about personalized learning. In fact, we're kind of hearing it in all quarters right now, a lot about personalized learning.
Yes.
I'm wondering if there's maybe a little bit of confusion about what personalized learning is. So it'd be great to really kick this off, to have you, help us. And how do you define personalized learning?
So I'm going to define personalized learning, and I'm also going to describe 2 other instructional models that people may be very familiar with to talk about the comparisons. So I define personalized learning as a progressively student-driven model where students have the opportunity to engage and pursue in authentic challenges, problems, tasks, and creations. And the idea here is that the teacher's role is one of broadening their horizon out, having them explore areas that they would not initially sort of pursue. So getting them to read different authors, different genres, having them explore problems of a certain topic or of a certain era, and then start to have them co-create and explore and investigate the ideas. That's very different from individualization. Individualization, while it may be labeled as personalized or personalized learning, really the only thing about individualization that makes it personalized is that students control the pace and the flow of the content. So in an individualized model, the kids can actually wind their way through the learning experience, but it's a static learning experience. So think about Khan Academy. Khan Academy is very engaging and interactive in how the students want to flow through those topics to demonstrate mastery. But at the same time, it's the same structure of the assignments and the problems and the questions. That's different from differentiation, where differentiation really, the teacher is still very much in control over what the student is doing, how they're doing it, and how they're demonstrating learning. So the good news is that that's a stepping stone to personalized learning, but it's still bound very much in a teacher-controlled system, where it's about the teacher's habits, the teacher's background knowledge, and the teacher's comfort level with broadening the box out a little bit. Personalized learning is really trying to introduce students to a set of parameters and let them explore and create as learning partners, as opposed to a hierarchical model.
That's great, Allison. That makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm sure it makes it's now starting to form in our audience's mind. Maybe some more questions about that, and I just will redirect that a little bit. Kate, now as taking Allison's answer and what she defined as personalized mastery learning, how do you react to that in terms of what that means for you and what's happening at Avison today?
Well, I first want to start by saying how angry I am at Allison. She didn't write this book 8 years ago. Because 9 years ago, when we were planning our schools, we really all we kept throwing around all those. We were throwing them around interchangeably. We're like, we wrote our charters as like, we're going to do personalized learning, and throughout the charter, you would see things starting as individualized learning, and sometimes we change it to differentiation. And so I think for us, it's been an evolution over the last 8 years, where in the last 3 years, we've really settled on this term, personalized mastery learning. And in my eyes, it's really taken the three that Allison just talked about, both personalized, differentiated, and individualized, and brought it together. So our working definition of personalized mastery learning is it takes place when a teacher and a student are collaborating on the what, the how, and the when a student learns best. Mm-hmm. So it's taking the best of both worlds. The personalization piece is that really, it's a collaboration. And for us, it's really on a continuum from how there are times when the teacher is driving that learning, which you would fall more into the differentiation category. And then there are times the student's completely owning the learning, which would be on the other side of the continuum for personalization, which would fit very nicely with what Allison has written about in her book. So for us, personalized mastery learning takes those together and says, hey, this is an ongoing relationship between teacher and student. We call them advisors, not teachers, so you may hear me say that today. But between the advisor and the learner, it's an ongoing, continuous relationship on a daily basis to determine what a student's going to learn, and that should be input on both sides. Teachers saying, sometimes I want you to learn this, and that's what needs to be learned based on this Common Core standard and what needs to happen. Other times the students said, I'd like to learn this. And the teacher's job is to help them create learning outcomes or competencies that match with what they'd like to learn. They're both going to work together on the how that's going to happen, all the steps of learning, activities and lessons and everything that needs to happen. And then they're going to also work together on when will the learning have taken place, which we would call mastery. When will I show mastery? How will I show mastery? Let's work together on deciding that based on my strengths, based on what you need to see as a teacher. So for us, it's putting all three of those together and calling it personalized mastery learning.
And so I just want to build on what Kate said. I was about a third of the way drafting this manuscript, and one of my dear friends said, Allison, you have to go see Kate. And I was like, sure. So I was like, so what am I going to see when I get to her school? And she's like, you just have to go see it. I can't even put it into words. And when I walked on that campus, and well, two campuses, it was absolutely magical. So one of the things that I saw, what I was writing about actually was sort of living out in front of me. And again, kudos to Kate and her team because it was an 8-year process to get to that point. But at the same time, there is just a tremendous reception, not just from the leadership team, but every single person on that campus was dedicated to what they were working on and what they were learning. They also had just this growth mindset that they wanted to continue to do better. So better in terms of continuing to strive to create a more well-defined, clear, transparent concept of personalized mastery learning. But also from the student's point of view, I remember when I walked into, I think it was a second grade classroom, where there were students that were very busy in preparing research reports on a bug of their choice. And then there was this one boy sitting in the far corner who was busy working on Battleship. And I went over and said, so what are you working on? He said, I'm working on a battleship. And then he was and then he took himself very seriously and he said, everybody else in the class is working on bugs, but I told my teacher, I don't find bugs interesting, I find battleships interesting. And so I asked if I could work on a battleship, and that's what I did. And so I think the idea here is that the students understand that their voice matters, right? And I think that's part of the passion that I have, and I know Kate has, around personalized learning, to actually have students not just feel that their voice matters, but the opportunity to take action on that and grow leaps and bounds in that regard.
I think that's fantastic, Allison. And I remember I was one of those people as I read your book, and I know you actually said to me at one point, "You have to go there, Darren." And
that's what I did.
Yeah, you did. You were just like that, with two hands saying, "You have to go there, and you have to see this." And so I think for our audience, it's probably the relevant question for you, Kate, is to say, we've just described what personalized learning looks like and what the definition is, but what does it really look like for those that haven't gone to see you? And I would encourage many to connect with you afterwards to go and see what you're doing. But describe it. What does personalized mastery learning, what does it really look like? What is it? How would you describe what's going on there?
Well, there's two ways. Of course, I could just describe when you walk into a classroom and what it looks like, and I would love for anyone to come visit us. We're wide open. We want to make sure everybody can see what we're doing and hopefully replicate things. But remember that it did take us 8 years to kind of get to where we are, and we're still not satisfied. But for us, personalized mastery learning, the reason why we say personalized and mastery learning, we don't want it to feel so on the personalized side, and Matt and Allison would agree that you're not always doing personalized learning. So we don't want people to think, oh, kids are doing whatever they want to do. That's not true at all. We start with a very clear set of learning outcomes that are based on Common Core standards, and we call those foundational standards. Those are the standards that all kids need to show mastery of to show that they have that class or course competency. But we also have what we call interest outcomes, and that's where kids have that ability to start to create their own learning outcomes. So when you put a combination of foundational and interest outcomes, you've already design that collaborative relationship. The teacher's coming up with the foundational, students are coming up with interest, and now we're working towards a portfolio at the end of whatever semester, year, class, course that is going to be very indicative of a collaborative effort. So you have very clear outcomes that you're trying to reach. You have clear rubrics that go with those outcomes or competencies. You have a clear plan for laying out what you're going to do and how you're going to learn it, whether using a blended learning model and using a lot of technology, or you're getting direct instruction in a small group. All types of instruction pedagogy to get there. You've clearly laid out when you're going to show competency and how you're going to show competency based on the rubrics. And then you're going to have a very, very strong reflection piece. That's the end when you're reflecting and you're making a case of why you've shown mastery. on your learning outcomes. You're working with your advisor teacher on that, so that you're both reflecting, you're both making comments on the work itself, the piece of evidence. And then eventually, of course, we'd love to have the showcase piece that they're presenting to an authentic audience somewhere. And we do that through what we, student-led conferences, celebrations of learning, we call them. But there has to be at some point kids that are showing their work authentically, because that drives drives all the way back to the beginning of how important it is of which outcomes they're going to choose, because they're going to be excited and passionate about presenting to an authentic audience. So those are really, we have a continuum. I'll be happy to share that after the webinar today, so that you can see those steps. But it's very systematic. It seems, we say personalized learning. A lot of people have this misnomer that it's very chaotic, which is not really the case at all. It's a very intentional model to make sure that collaboration happens between the advisor teacher and the student learner.
So I want to piggyback on what Kate said. So I'm going to do exactly what I did to Darren. You have to go see her school. So it's in beautiful California, so it's a lovely trip. But I think one of the other magical pieces, as I was listening to Kate talk, is the level of self-direction that the students and the teacher advisors exhibit. So when you're thinking about what self-direction looks like, this is incredibly important as a set of intellectual dispositions that have to be working in hand with any kind of personalized learning enterprise. So I've had the great fortune in working with Benna Kalick over the past 6 months, and she and I are starting to think through what are the habits of mind that are incredibly impactful, that make it so that students and teachers can work, can grow, can think, and collaborate together. So again, it's the self-direction that you envision in the classrooms and the school spaces of Avison that are just miraculous.
Yeah, it truly is a mindset that has to be, I said cult-like in the beginning with our guiding principles, but you really have to talk about it all the time and coach teachers, advisors, and students on how to have that mindset, that no one's passive. Nobody's passive here. Students aren't passive. Teachers aren't at any given time. Not on the what, not on the how, not on the when they're going to learn. And so it's a shift, and I won't say it was always easy, and we still want to get better at it. But I think anybody who wants to go down this road, if you have the mindset that it is a collaborative effort, that all education is a collaborative effort, that's the right start to the mindset, and then really it's the tools and systems to make it work.
Yep.
Great. I've got a great question that's relevant right now, I guess, to this, that what you've described is, it almost sounds magical when you talk about it, Allison, and I know you certainly gave me the 2 hands to say you should definitely go on, and it is pretty incredible to see. But I'm just going to share a question.
I'm not mad at her anymore. I'm not mad at her now because she's talking nice about my school. So writing that book too late.
Yeah. So here's the question. It's from Matt, and thanks very much, Matt, for sharing this, and I hope you don't mind me talking about that. But he says, thank you for the definition, very helpful. My question is about the pressure our teachers already feel that there's not enough time to meet the standards set by teachers already. How do we encourage and allow teachers to let their kids follow these inquiries and interests? So that was my same questions. Love this idea of someone deciding to do battleships instead, but how do we find the time? Allison, do you want to take that first?
That's a great question, and this is something that I've very much seen and felt when I've been working in schools over the past couple years. Time is not anybody's friend, and when teachers feel hyper pressured to cover the standards, the students are really just dragged along for the ride. And so when you're thinking about how can we create a culture of innovation and trust that permeates the school, doesn't matter whether you're a student or a teacher or an administrator, there has to be space, physical space, emotional space, support that when you try something new, a new idea, something like Genius Hour or an opportunity for students to pursue a question or take a tangent to fruition, when you're doing that kind of risk, you have to believe that you're going to be supported. So part of the response to Matt's question is that covering the standards is not what teachers were hired to do. And I think teachers are feeling that more and more, because if I feel like my job is to just do this headlong, mad dash to the finish line, I'm not bringing every kid with me. But the other important piece is that when you're covering standards, you're also losing kids from previous years. So if you don't have the readiness of students, then the teacher is put in the very uncomfortable position, should I teach 2 grade levels back to catch them up? And that puts the teachers in even more of a bind to continue to cover the curriculum. So my response is to, when it comes to personalized learning, start small. Start thinking about how can we create a level of trust and innovation that's happening in my space. As a classroom teacher in my space, what can I do right now to get them engaged and excited? So I'll tell a quick story. When I was teaching high school's American government to my 12th graders, it was a class where I think 90% of them were either in jail or went to rehab and then came back to school. So there were, again, about 9 students in total. And one of the real challenges that they were having outside of the school walls was getting pulled over by the policemen because they believed that they were being profiled. So one of the questions that my kids had was, how can we know what our constitutional rights are? And so that was the hook for them to start understanding, what do I have the right to do as a teenager within the school walls and outside of the school walls? And we did a series of exercises and powerful moves that were based on what they were curious about, as opposed to following the curriculum. At the end of the day, we addressed those standards. We addressed the primary documents that we were expected to do. But we took a left turn from every other American government class I was teaching because they were compelled and interested to pursue it in that way. So Matt, I hope that helps, just to give you a little bit of hope, but also to continue to suggest that your students are desperate for you to be the source of inspiration. But when they get inspired, please, please have an opportunity for them to be able to pursue that inspiration.
Yeah, and if I can, do I have time, Dan, to piggyback on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Kate, I was going to hope that you were going to jump in on this and just, continue on that, because that's brilliant. I guess from your perspective, what are those key shifts that are really needed to make room for personalized learning? That seems to be the theme underneath.
Yeah. And that's really our passion. And Matt, I absolutely feel your pain. You can't come visit our school and say, hey, you're a charter school that started from scratch with this mission and vision. You find people that are interested in this mindset. So I don't want you to look at our schools as like, oh, that's how we have to be. Our passion really is helping you, Matt, and teachers in the classroom to figure out how to start small and do this. And I'm going to use the word efficiency. I think we lose that when we think about all the standards you have to cover and the pressure that's on you, that whole group instruction is going to be the way to do that.
Right.
It's truly not the most efficient way to do it. When you think of a whole group lesson, you're probably hitting less than 1/3 of your kids in the sweet spot of what they need to actually learn. So what we've found, it's all about flexibility of time, space, and resources, which all 3 of those are very scarce in a regular public school classroom. But if you think about spending enough time up front to do some pre-assessment, and that to know your kids, both what their interests are, what their academic skills are, their levels are, and then you start to think strategically about how to use that same time that could be whole group into small group or individualized, or using a piece of technology to help for certain kids. Once you know they're in more and this is where we call differentiation. Yes, but I think you need to throw in the interest level of kids too.
Yep.
So when you throw in the personalization and the differentiation, your time is going to be more efficient, because the sweet spot of learning, you could spend 8 minutes with a student individually and they'll probably get more than a 25-minute whole group lesson. Now you say, well, I got to times that out, but it doesn't work that way, because when you start to really do it, there are some kids who are so efficient and self-directed, they even need less time to check in with you, whereas other kids may need more time. It is not easy. We're not going to be sending this message out into public schools saying, oh, come on, just switch over. Allison's right. You need to start small with either an interest project the kids have and get excited about that. And I would also add on the pre-assessment piece. Any way you can get to know the story, the data story of every student in your classroom, and start to strategically figure out how to change your resources in your classroom around your seating in order to hit very strategic and purposeful small group instruction, kids working together that can do that, working one-on-one when you have to with some kids, but again, it can be a very brief amount of time for them to get exactly what they need. I guess that's what I want to finish with. When you can give kids exactly what they need, when they need it, it's so much more efficient than giving everybody the same thing whether they need it or not.
Yeah, and I believe that students are the greatest untapped resource in the classroom and in schools. Yeah. So I think it's time that we start following their lead and have them be partners in what they want to do and how they want to go about doing it. And you can do that, and we're going to talk about this in one of our later sessions. You can do that getting them aligned to those competencies. So I think that when we're talking about standards, standards are not antithetical to personalized learning. I want to underscore that. It's incredibly important that they're not the enemy of personalized learning, because I think that was a subtlety in Matt's question. And right now, standards are probably more amenable to personalized learning now than ever before. So I think the real question is, how are we designing around standards? And I think that's really where we've gotten stuck. We are over-assessing kids. We are also over-assessing kids on small, itty-bitty chunks and hoping that it will add up to the larger whole. So I think that that's another suggestion that I might have, is really stepping back and thinking hard about what are our top priorities within a unit, within a course, within a program, and based on that, how can we create space for the students and the teachers to do some innovative thinking and creation together.
And I just want to jump on trust really quickly.
Go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, just really quickly, the trust piece. I find a lot of teachers don't trust themselves to know that if I spend 1 minute with a student and I watch them do a math problem, that I don't need to correct 40 problems tomorrow. And that's what I also find is the efficiency places. We have to trust ourselves as professionals and educators. And I know your administrator, Matt, needs to trust you, and districts need to trust schools, and I know that's a big cultural piece that Allison and I will talk more about in another session. But you really have to trust yourself that if you have some quality time with a small group or an individual or a student, and you listen to them and you watch them, you can do so much really informal assessment that is strong and powerful, and get them onto the next challenging zone of proximal development, lesson or activity, and it's just more efficient. But trust yourself not to have to do the traditional assessment and hours of correcting papers, and that has taken so much time when you could be in front of a student instead. And so I know it's a little convoluted, and there will be more on that later session.
I'm bowing, Kate.
Yeah.
That's right. Amen, hallelujah.
Trust yourself. Trust yourself.
That's right.
Yeah.
Go to Kate's, 2 fingers in.
That's right.
So look, you guys, just to let you know that there's lots of participation here, and I would just to give you a little bit of enthusiasm that's coming in through the channels here. Of course, we have a comment that says, we're over-assessing kids. Allison, you're spot on. So, but I do want to now sort of move to some of these questions, because I think there's some interesting pieces as we start to think about these possibilities. One that's come from Singapore here that I'd like you to react to is, the question is, how do parents react to personalized learning? Do they have any discomfort at their children having such freedom? So we'll start with you, Kate.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this a little shorter so we can get to more questions because this is very exciting. Not not easily in the beginning, so I'm not going to mix any words. Parents are used to seeing what they've seen for years, what they experience themselves, and what they've seen for years, and that they judge how rigorous a classroom is by how much homework comes home, and those two have nothing to do with each other. So it is difficult in the beginning. So it takes a lot of conversations, a lot of. I think you win over parents when the kids win them over. You're not going to win them over as educators, but when a parent comes to a student-led conference, when they come to a celebration of learning, when we arm parents with really rigorous questions that those kids can answer on a deep level, because they know the content so well, and they see the passion come out in their face when they're providing their presentation or they're showing off their project, that's when you win parents over, because they won't believe you up until they come. And then once they come, they're like, I see now. All that stuff you've been telling me and your community forums and your newsletters, like I didn't get it. I didn't get it till I saw it. And when they see it, they start trusting, and that's back to trust again. They start to trust that we are going to equip our kids with tools, not just jam their head full of facts and knowledge. We're going to equip them with tools and passion and interest and motivation. When they see that in their own kids, then game over. Like, then they're good. They're like, okay, we got you. We still don't understand how you do it or what you're doing, but we get it. And that has to be visual too. And so tools like what we're looking at using Edutech's Learning Board, tools allow them to see a profile of the student, to see all the things they've mastered, to read reflections. We say, don't look at the grade, read the reflection. Read a student's reflection on their learning if you want to know what they learned and how they feel about that learning. So show them through their kids. That's my answer.
Yeah, and I'll just do a short statement. You know, as a parent myself, what parents desperately want to know from educators is, are you doing well by my child? That's it. Do you understand who they are? Are you helping them achieve their dreams? Now, when you sort of dismantle that question, are you doing well by my child, that may also be part of the parent's dream. So I think that's really where we need to invite parents into the conversation and have them be part of the culture of trust and innovation. It's not just having them pursue questions and curiosities. It's having the parents be part of that pursuit, to engage in the conversations around the dinner table. But it's also having parents be part of the process. So a parent can add their expertise in the classroom, not perhaps by their own child, but be a valued resource to somebody else. They can offer feedback and guidance. They can be part of the public presentation. There are lots of ways we can engage parents in a much more rich, sustained way, so that they can see what's happening in the classroom with their own eyes, and they can appreciate what the design is truly about. Like I said, parents understand more than anybody else how much the world has changed. They get that. Probably more than educators do. At the same time, they still have this idea that what they experienced in school is what they should have their kids being experienced. So again, I think that there's a little bit of a mismatch of how the world has changed and what they're expecting of schools. So if we're sharing and including them in a new vision, then they can grow into that shoulder to shoulder with the students and the faculty and the community members as well.
That's great, Allison. Thank you for that. And thank you for the audience. I know this is driving quite a bit of discussion in that space. And thanks very much. I love this comment from Kimberly. She said, how will students make out in university when there's no freedom of choice? So I'm just going to redirect this because I think it's a good discussion to say, other than, Allison, pointing everyone to go and visit and every parent to go and visit Kate at her school. I'm sure you'd love to have them, but every parent is, and to really see that. because we're really talking about these possibilities. How do we open parents and students and teachers to these possibilities? Kate, do you have any ideas on how we might do that?
Well, it's probably similar to looking at the evidence of the students. If I could direct you to the college essays that my seniors wrote, if I could direct you to their graduation speeches, when you hear kids talk about their learning and that they've been given the trust and the ownership of their own learning, that toolbox that they're going to take with them to university, and now we're hearing from our kids now after 8 years coming back from university saying, wow, I can write, I can defend an argument, I can present with the best, communication skills and techniques, all the things that they need for college and managing projects and time and calendars and that, which again, synonymously with the career world, I mean, they're going to need those same exact things, whether they're in a personal or social learning environment. When they have those tools, they cannot fail in college. And for them to know they have them, that's the difference. The metacognition of our kids that know they have the skills, that know they have a voice, that know they can figure out the system and how to work the system. And sometimes that's true in college. You just got to know what you've got to do to get the A in the class. That is what you're equipping kids with, a toolbox. Not with, can you study for 6 hours a night? That is not, will they have to do that? Possibly. But I would imagine even our kids are even more efficient in college than some kids, because we're going to look at it differently from a different angle and be a little more strategic and efficient with their time. So we don't worry about that is the parent question, are they going to be ready for university? And that's just, how do you say, let's just put them in a boring lesson for 30 minutes a day, so they'll be ready for boring lessons in college for 30 minutes, or 60 minutes a day. It doesn't compute to me. And we're finding evidence now that the kids are showing us that they're ready. But again, that's how you have to convince people. You have to hear from the kids about their own learning.
And I think it's worth continuing to follow up on the question that I believe Kimberly, or the comment that Kimberly stated in the chat space. Students at the college level, first of all, have the opportunity to choose the courses right from the very beginning in their freshman year. And then they also have the right to continue to self-select for their major, their area of interest, their senior thesis. So there are a lot of opportunities for students to personalize the learning all through their post-secondary education. But the other piece is that they generally, even if you have a full course load in university, you typically have between 10 to 15 hours total a week of formal schooling. So that's a lot of extra time, right? And so I think the challenge is, how are kids using that extra time? Now, we can say there are a lot of ways that they're using their extra time that are probably more extracurricular than we would like. But there was a great college director who challenged his college staff to say, can we come up with other options outside of the 10 to 15 hours that we have in our spaces with them? Can we create social entrepreneurs? That was Babson College. And so I think the power here is that colleges are starting to pay attention to personalized learning as well, trying to think hard about what value added can we offer, can we contribute to our students, so that not only will they be graduates of our colleges and universities, but they will start to see the value of being on the college campus. So they're going to start seeing the value of being connected to this local and global community.
Yeah, and just very quickly, I think, that's in the data. You'll hear our kids talk about the right college, not the college their parents want them to go to, or the best college, but the right college for them. And when you start having that conversation in 9th grade, and then 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, you're talking about setting you up for success. You're going to find the school that fits your learning style, and you will be more successful, and what's the major that you really want. You're thinking about that before you're a freshman or sophomore in college. So we're finding that conversation about the right college, and just to make sure everybody feels comfortable, our kids are not losing acceptance to any major universities that they want to go to. All of our kids can find entrance into the top 3 choices. So it's not holding them back that they didn't do the traditional curriculum the same way as everybody else. That's just not happening. We're not finding that's true.
Well, this has been fantastic, and it's traditional when I spend time with Allison and Kate. I could literally talk to you all day, and I think I have in a couple of instances. And it would seem to me that our audience is enjoying asking these questions. There's a number of other questions here that are nicely targeted, but it's coming close to our time to sort of close things out. What I'd like to do is just give you a quick opportunity. The theme for this first webinar that we had was, really what are the possibilities? And I have to thank you both, because you've done a really amazing job at opening our eyes to what the possibilities are and sharing what that actually looks like. Kate, I know there's a lot of people that are going to arrive now and see everything because of Allison pointing them in your direction. And I know that's a great thing. Just a quick closing remark from each of you. Again, I'm going to thank you a little bit more formally before we close in. For those that are in our audience, we've got all of your questions. Thank you very much for posting them. We will share these with Allison and Kate. We'll get back to you on them, and I'll have some suggestions on how we might continue forward. Some of these questions will actually come up in some of our future webcasts with both Kate and Allison. So if you have a closing remark, I guess, from both of you, if you could just give us a quick line of saying, if we go right back to the theme of what are the possibilities, how would you, and I'll start with you, Allison, first. What are the possibilities here, and how would you like to close off with everyone that's in our audience?
Well, this is the start of the school year. My kiddos going into grade 9 and going into grade 6 haven't started school yet, so it's about 2 weeks for them still. But when you are getting to know your students, whether you've already met them a week or 2 ago or you're just starting soon, really think hard about how you're introducing yourself to them. Think hard about what kind of experiences that you're designing on their behalf. So that would be my suggestion in terms of the possibilities, regardless of grade level or subject area. Get them excited about the possibilities of what they're going to be creating with you this year, the kinds of problems and challenges they're going to think through with you this year. And again, for those of you that are just starting or you've already started, welcome back, and I wish you well and looking forward to seeing you on the next several seminars with Kate.
Great, and thank you.
Kate?
And yeah, I think it's very similar. It's so funny, we just are going to the same exact idea. But I think for, the question for me when I was an educator, none of us go home thinking like, wow, did I really deliver an amazing whole group lesson today? What we go home and think is like, did I get them today? Did I see each child? Did I know them well enough that I saw progress in Johnny and Jesus and Mary, and we really think of individual kids as good educators, but when we go back into the classroom, we don't think we can look at them and see each child. So I guess that's my line is, and same as Allison saying, is can you figure out a way to run your classroom that you can see each child for their interest level, for their academic abilities, and then design a classroom where more and more opportunities open up. It won't be easy. We know that you're dealing with different administrations and different districts and policies and programs, and all of that's true, and it always will be. But can you figure out some way in your classroom, even in a small way, to carve out some time to get to know each student and start to listen to them and watch them and figure out a way to just engage them so that when you go home at night, you're thinking, I got him. I got that one. I didn't get that one yet, but I'm going to get him tomorrow, and he is going to be engaged. So that's what we all think about when we go home as educators. And so I just encourage you to do what Allison said. Take some time in the beginning to look at them individually and say, how can I create those opportunities for motivation? And again, thank you so much, the audience. We were going to put all this in one session. Thank goodness we didn't do that. We have 4 more. There's so much more to get into, right? I apologize for the questions that didn't get answered. but we will definitely put them into the next, help us plan our next sessions. And thank you to Darren, too, and for Allison for joining.
Well, I'm going to close this out, and again, Kate, Allison, not only thank you for your time, but it really has been quite inspirational. I think we have given a lot of interesting areas. I know I feel even more engaged about this and interested, and I hope our audience is feeling the same way. In fact, I can see that they're asking questions. So again, thank you for your time. It's been awesome to have you, and thank you to our audience that have asked great questions. So just debate you for the next ones, I guess. Some of the great questions that came out is how, and this came from, I'm sorry, I can't see her name, but how do teachers plan? So I'm sorry, can't see the name, but how do teachers plan, and the allocation of time for personalized learning, for instance, was one. You know, how do we get that? What does it look like every day was one of the notions. So those questions are fabulous. They lead straight into where we're going for the next session. So just to give you a little bit of preview, we've got Allison and Kate coming again, where we're going to talk about clarity, about what are we aiming for in personalized learning, and then we're going to move on to context. You know, why should I care, as well as the culture, what is expected for me and others inside this whole endeavor and everyone else. And then the capital, how do we collectively improve that performance? So we've got another bunch of sessions there, so that's one way that you can find out more and have some of those questions answered. We will coordinate with Kate and Allison and get some answers back to you. And this whole series, as well as connecting with us, we'd be happy to share and connect and give you Kate's address so you can all go there and see exactly what's happening. So thanks again. Great to have you, and again, thanks to our audience for taking the time and participating with us today. Looking forward to working with all of you and seeing you again, Kate and Allison. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.